Hello and welcome to the World Bank Group headquarters in Washington, D.C. I'm Srimati Sridhar and you're watching The Zone. In the next half hour, I'll be bringing you up to date on the discussions taking place at the World Bank Group and IMF spring meetings on reshaping development for a new era. And remember, you can also join the conversation using the hashtag #ReshapingDevelopment. So yesterday, we talked about how the challenges facing development have evolved. Today, let's kick off by getting a sense of the World Bank's ambitious plans to expand the scope and impact of its work to respond to those challenges.
The World Bank is one of the most effective platforms created to connect capital markets to sustainable development, a crucial element of its core mission. With about $30 billion in new financing each year, combined with a broad range of advisory services, the bank helps countries grow their economies and invest in natural and human capital. With more than $20 billion paid in by shareholders since its founding in 1944, the World Bank has been able to provide over $800 billion of support for development projects that have improved the living standards of billions around the globe. Those projects make an impact in areas such as education, gender equality, health, food security, and clean energy. And to address the challenge of our generation, the World Bank is mainstreaming climate into all of its activities, working with member countries to apply a whole-of-economy approach to climate action. And now, in response to mounting and interconnected global challenges, the World Bank is stepping up the way it finances sustainable development. It is forging new partnerships and seeking fresh ways to maximize its capital and deliver financing to its members. Building on its foundation as a AAA-rated institution, there are many opportunities for the bank to innovate and multiply its efforts. For example, it has been developing new financial instruments like outcome-based bonds. A $50 million bond issued in February 2023 helps provide clean water to school children in Vietnam. Last year, the bank issued a landmark $150 million wildlife conservation bond designed to protect black rhinos and support communities in South Africa. The World Bank is also helping developing economies manage risks through catastrophe bonds. They help fortify financial resilience to disasters like earthquakes in Chile and hurricanes in Jamaica and the Philippines. Since the World Bank issued the first green bond in 2008, investment in green, social, and sustainability bonds has grown exponentially into a multi-trillion-dollar market. More and more investors are now integrating sustainable practices in all their funding, expanding the concepts of transparency and impact to the entire bond market. From its beginning, the World Bank has always created an impact far greater than the sum of its resources. And that means better lives, better opportunities, and better possibilities for millions of people worldwide.
So those are the headlines. But to delve into the detail, I caught up with Anshala Kant, Managing Director and World Bank Group Chief Financial Officer. I asked her how the bank is able to turn $20 billion of shareholder investment into $800 billion of development finance.
You know, the simple answer, the straightforward answer is that we leverage the capital base that we have to raise funds from the capital markets in support of the operations that we do in client countries. But you know, that's the simple answer. The story behind that simple answer is that we have a very strong AAA rating for IBRD. And that instills confidence among in investors to actually put in money into the bank for deploying in client countries. They also like what we do basically, you know, the mission that we have, the operations that we do in countries, everything that we do goes towards sustainable development. But shareholders have been standing like a rock behind the institution, and that has really, enhanced the what should I say, financial sustainability of the institution. Similarly, if you think about the borrowing countries, they have been excellent in their repayment. So their track record for repayment has helped the institution remain financially sustainable on an independent basis.
So Anjula, as part of the evolution process, what is the ambition, would you say, for the World Bank's financing model, and what do you think would change?
We are trying to enhance the World Bank's mission. We are trying to enhance the operational model, basically to increase a focus on global challenges, including climate change, pandemic preparedness, fragility and conflict. At the same time, keeping a razor sharp focus on poverty reduction and inequality. So clearly, as you enhance your mission, as you enhance your operational model, significant and substantial additional resources will be needed to deliver on these goals. So what we are doing in the finance complex is looking at our balance sheet. We are looking at our financial model to see if we can enhance financing capacity to deliver to clients. At the same time, again, we are keeping the overall arching principles in mind as we do this exercise, that we need to remain financially sustainable and we need to guard our AAA rating.
Sure.
In this effort, I think we are in a good place today. We have a approval and tacit agreement with the board for a slew of measures which will enhance IBRD financing capacity by about $50 billion over the next 10 years. So, for IDA countries too, of course, the situation is worse. As you remember, we launched IDA 21 year ahead of time in response to the COVID crisis. But since then, there have been multiple challenges. Chief among them is a high risk of debt distress. They have very tight fiscal space to deal with the huge needs that their countries face. So we have launched a crisis response facility, basically to mobilize additional resources, new resources from donors, which we can then leverage to enhance our delivery to client countries in IDA. Aside from this, of course, both for IBRD and IDA, we are looking at other options, balance sheet optimization measures, more options which may need shareholder support.
I want to talk a bit about the private sector. How do you think they could be better engaged when it comes to development, and why do you think this might be critical to get financing at scale?
So I think there is a clear understanding and realization that governments and public sector alone cannot deliver what is needed. It has to be all hands on board. So private sector has a huge role to play. I'm sure you're aware, that the World Bank Group has been at the forefront of facilitating private capital and private capital mobilization in these client countries. I'll give you a few examples of recent innovative transactions we have done out of the bank. We did it was a very exciting transaction, a wildlife conservation bond. We issued the bond, and the coupons on those bonds, the investors agreed to channel those coupons towards promoting black rhino population in South Africa. So it's like an outcome-based bond. If we succeed in those projects, the investors will get rewarded for the success of rhino population growth. Let me tell you another transaction which operations is working on. This is about results-based financing terms, kind of a pilot transaction, where if the country achieves some outcomes, in this case it is about environment preservation and reduction in GHG emissions, then there could be a possibility of buying down the interest rate. So it is results-based financing terms. You need a donor, you need a country, you need shareholders, you need partners. So I think this space is increasingly becoming more exciting. It is about partnerships. It is about partnerships between us, between donor countries, between borrowing countries, and between the private sector.
Thank you so much, Anjula, for joining us here today.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
As Anjula indicated, the challenges now facing development exist in a more complex world, amplified by multiple crises and uncertainty. Violent conflict has spiked dramatically in the last decade, and the world has seen a series of massive setbacks to stability in fragile regions across the world. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has had far-reaching social and economic impacts, disrupting supply chains, commodity, food, and fuel prices across the world. The cost of reconstruction in Ukraine now eclipses $400 billion. Yesterday, the country's president, Vladimir Zelensky, joined the spring meetings by video link.
Thousands and thousands of facilities in Ukraine have been ruined. Thanks to the partners, most of the expenses for maintaining a normal life have been secured for this year. But the basic needs for reconstruction remain open. It's housing, energy, transport, social and humanitarian sphere, public services.
Against the backdrop of increased volatility, the World Bank has strengthened partnerships across its humanitarian, development, and peace-building nexus. I caught up with Dr. Rana Dajani from the grassroots organization We Love Reading. She participated in the World Bank's consultation on its evolution process this week. I began by asking Dr. Dajani about the organization which she founded.
So We Love Reading works to create change makers through reading by changing mindsets. The program started in Jordan and is in 65 countries today, and the majority are women. And these women, when they, through reading, discover their inner potential, they become leaders in their own right and start developing solutions for the Sustainable Development Goals. And especially in areas where there's war, migration, or natural disasters, where you really need a placeholder for education, and you need hope and optimism for those people so that they can start planning their futures and being really, really engaged and have agency.
I love the women's empowerment coming from
Yeah,
that.
and actually it's not just empowerment.
Yeah.
They already have it in them. We just
helping them realize it.
Exactly.
I love
exactly.
that. As a civil society organization, what's been your experience so far here at the spring meetings?
So I'm here representing We Love Reading and representing Catalyst 2030, which is a network of social entrepreneurs from all over the world. And I'm here to listen to different people, and it's been amazing for the diversity and the inclusiveness from different countries around the world, especially the Global South. And it's heartwarming that the Global South hasn't been included in presenting their opinions and contributing to these decisions, which have been usually driven by the Global North. And it's fascinating because that's how we shape the future going forward.
Yeah, it is. You participated in the Evolution Forum, and that's really looking at the evolution of the World Bank as it looks to meet some of its critical global challenges. What's been your perspective on that?
Well, there's 3 points. One, the urgency of this evolution roadmap, especially not just for climate change and pandemics and health, but for fragile and violent places like Palestine. I'm from Jerusalem, and we know what's been happening for the past 70 years. Secondly, the roadmap proposes a new operating model, which is based on a country as a model. And I think that's very important. And the only way to do that is by working with the social innovation economy, which means that it's based on proximate leaders, social entrepreneurs, who are creating solutions that are bottom up. And it's about the last mile, contributing from all vulnerable communities, especially women and youth, to come up with these solutions. So there's equity, there's respect, and there's partnerships and multi-stakeholders. And ultimately, if we do that, we can achieve democracy, right? So through this social innovation, because democracy should be based not on political views, but on the actual needs of the people going forward and voting according to those. And the last point is, how do you fund this, right? This is a new innovative idea, the social innovation economy. So we proposed in the Evolution Roadmap Forum to have a 2% corporate tax and a 10% luxury item tax, and that the social entrepreneurs would not have to would be refunded for their VAT. And if that money, that would equal $300 billion. And if that could be put in a trust that would be run not by the United Nations, but by the social entrepreneurs themselves, then really we can make a difference going forward and to make a better world for future generations of humanity.
That's amazing. Well, Rana, thanks so much for joining us here and for sharing more about your important mission. Thank you for everything that you're doing. There's been a lot of talk about strengthening partnerships this week. The World Bank's key relationship with the United Nations stretches way back to the birth of both institutions. Achim Steiner is the administrator of the UN Development Program. He took time out to chat with me about how both organizations can collaborate more closely in the future. But first, he gave his impressions of this year's meetings.
Well, spring meetings are always a reflection both of where the bank itself is perhaps trying to be an agenda setter and at the same time where the world finds itself in that larger development arena. I think if I go back, and it is now 3 decades that at various intervals I have attended these spring meetings, there are times when the bank is looked to in terms of the development agenda, the development policy setting function, because the world is always looking for orientation and the bank has always had an extraordinary intellectual capital, the World Development Report, many other forms of providing, let's say, some leadership. Yes. Then there are moments where the bank has to step in because there is a financial crisis, a debt crisis. Let's think back to the HIPC era. Then there are moments when the world becomes impatient with the World Bank. 50 years is enough campaign. And here we are now in 2023, reform of the World Bank, expanding its mandate, expanding its capital base, but also its financial muscle in helping a world deal with an enormous debt and liquidity crisis after COVID. And I think in that sense, this is a very interesting meeting because it converges multiple agendas. Financial crisis, a policy rethink about how to move forward, climate change, but also a development financing paradigm shift that is necessary. So I think a very intense week and the evolution roadmap of the bank clearly being at the center of delegates' attention.
And the UNDP is present in about 60 fragile countries. It's a major partner of the World Bank in FCB settings, especially in some of the more challenging areas like Afghanistan and Yemen. Give us a scale of the problem and how do you see the World Bank UNDP partnership evolving to help some of the most vulnerable in those settings?
Well, in many respects, we are the world's best attempt to respond together when crises occur, whether they are natural disasters, the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, whether it is conflict such as in Iraq at the time, or whether it is simply sheer economic collapse, also countries that go into default. I mean, we have many countries that may have a trigger in terms of a particular crisis, but then it becomes a systemic crisis. Even a debt crisis, a default, leads to protests in the street, radicalization of citizens. They abandon the institutions of government. Politics moves onto the streets. The bank and UNDP, embedded in the larger UN development system, in virtually every country, we interact with one another. In many countries, we are able to complement each other, particularly when you say in fragile and conflict countries. There we are able to often operate with UNDP on the ground, with a long-established infrastructure, with personnel, where the bank is able to provide financing, but less perhaps in the traditional way. I mean, even in a country like Afghanistan, where there is not a recognized government as such, they are de facto authorities, yet the bank holds significant amounts of money, trust funds that were earmarked for Afghanistan. The UN Development Program, but also our humanitarian colleagues, other sister agencies in the UN family, we are able to operate on the ground. We are able to operate directly in support of people. And a very important part of our partnership has to be to not only look at crisis as a humanitarian response issue. It is when we are able to do emergency development, early recovery work, which is precisely where the bank and UNDP have really in recent years come to share a common cause, but also a way of thinking in complementarity terms. And that's why just a few weeks ago, I brought a whole team of senior leaders in UNDP here to the bank. We met with vice presidents, with our colleagues Anna and Axel also, and discussed how do we design more deliberately to work together, to deploy in these situations, because it's very easy to wait for circumstances to create this possibility. No, we have to be more deliberate. We are multilateral institutions. We are, in a sense, bound to work together, and we are certainly investing heavily in that.
Achim, finally, what are some areas of opportunities that you see for closer collaboration between the World Bank and also the UNDP, especially during this time?
Let me give you 3 very brief examples. Digitalization. It's not only about fiber optic cable. It's not only about number of smartphones per capita. It's building digital ecosystems. It's being able to help governments look at the digital readiness, that they, in a sense, are able to examine their own national setting, then set priorities. The bank becomes a very critical part of helping countries to invest in building the digital public infrastructure. I think it's an area where our institutions can serve our partner countries extremely well by working together. Financing of development. At the moment, the UN and UNDP, being in a lead role here, is supporting 86 countries with integrated national financing frameworks, helping countries to look at financing that is available to come out of this crisis, to invest in a development pathway forward. Again, working closely together, we can help countries to provide more cohesive advice and also attract investment. The next part is energy transitions.
Yes.
There is now a significant amount of private capital potentially available, but in many of the countries we work in, they are not the natural destinations of private investors, as the bank also finds out. And I think looking at governance, looking at regulatory frameworks, setting the conditions, de-risking the investment environment is another area where we can work hand in hand, because ultimately no government can rely only on public finance. It must leverage private capital, domestic, international. The more we can bring down the cost of that capital, the more we can create conditions that attracts private investors, the more rapid the transition in the energy sector and the mobility sector will happen. The net zero point of convergence in the future becomes something that unifies countries rather than divides them. And I think this is a crucial part also of what in the transition that the bank is now going through with the new president coming in. Climate change is not another agenda alongside development. It is the development agenda of our time, but framed in the right way and framed from the perspectives of developing countries.
Well, a lot of important work ahead. Hakim, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for sharing a bit more about that with us here today. Really appreciate your time. So earlier we heard about how reading can empower girls. Empowering females in turn can help countries overcome crises and unleash trillions of dollars in economic potential. My colleague Estelle Kasubi has been looking at the data in West Africa.
So let's focus on girls. Empowering adolescent girls is critical in solving some key development issues. To do so, it's important to understand the specific challenges and opportunities that adolescent girls face in the region. Let's delve into the data. Looking at selected countries in Western and Central Africa, a region with the highest proportion of adolescents. To start, girls face unique challenges compared to boys, including early marriage and pregnancy. A higher proportion of adolescent girls in this age group are married and have children compared to adolescent boys. Moreover, a higher proportion of adolescent girls are not married but already have children compared to adolescent boys. What factors are behind these staggering differences? Namely, the lack of access to quality education and other resources, as well as social norms that legitimize early marriage and childbearing for girls. Looking at the region overall, there are far less girls in school than boys. And there are significant differences when we look at individual countries. For instance, in Niger, ensuring that girls have access to education remains a challenge compared to Cameroon, for example. But in Cameroon, more girls are working while in school, which will call for different policies. In another country, Ghana, when compared to boys, far less girls are working when they are not in school. And when we look at how to get girls the skill that will give them a better future, we need to understand their circumstances. You can see that many of them are working, so we need to give them opportunity that let them work and get schooling at the same time. Adolescent girls in sub-Saharan Africa face unique challenges compared to boys. Girls' profile, whether they are working, have children, or are married, differ significantly compared to boys. Effective intervention provide girls with the skills, resources, and support they need to succeed in their current situation as well as in the future. If we empower adolescent girls by building their agency and creating an enabling environment for their success, we unlock their potential to contribute to their families, communities, and countries, ultimately addressing key development issues in Africa and beyond. Africa must invest in girls and build its human capital of tomorrow today.
Thanks so much, Estelle. Now let's turn the conversation to social. I'm back with Greg Felder from the IFC. Greg, great to see you again.
No, thanks for having me again.
So tell me, you've been monitoring the social channels, listening in on what people have been saying. What stood out for you today?
Yeah, so I'm following the conversation online, and there's a few key topics that I'm consistently seeing in the comments. First would be climate, and of course, that's no surprise. I think we're hear that throughout the week. But I'm also seeing a lot on economic growth, and in particular, women entrepreneurs.
Oh, that's great. I think actually we have an event later today just on that. How about comments? Are people saying anything on Twitter or Facebook?
Yeah, there are a couple that I want to share with the online audience here. So there's a couple of tweets I'll pull up, and I'll start with Domenico Tavalioni. So Domenico, thank you for tweeting. He says, "These are challenging years ahead. There's lots to do to support the global economy, and in particular, poor countries and emerging markets. It seems impossible until it's done." And then we also have another tweet here on women entrepreneurs, as we mentioned, and this is from Noor Diadine, who tweets, "We need to raise awareness about women's work and believe in them as entrepreneurs. In my country, we have more than 300,000 women breadwinners." Wow.
Wow.
These women need jobs or financial security to raise their families. So that was just one of the many comments on women entrepreneurs. And like you said, we'll hear more about that this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Greg. And if you didn't know, there is a public meeting later today, which you can catch on World Bank Live, addressing the economic empowerment of women. But Greg, before you go, I heard you were getting all interactive in our digital media zone. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I was hanging out at the Zone yesterday. First, I was at our famous selfie wall, taking some photos. But there was also this really cool interactive experience called Development Quest. So let's take a look at what I was up to. Welcome to the Digital Media Zone, the DMZ. I'm here with David. Hey, David.
Hi, Craig.
We have a lot of cool interactive experiences here. I've been hearing a lot about the Development Quest simulation. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Development Quest is a new interactive game that people can take online. It's a set of questions, and depending on your answers, your development outcome will be different.
Cool, so it's like working at the World Bank for a day.
Yeah. Well,
all right, let's give it a try.
All right. You need to choose your region first.
Okay.
Which one do you go for?
Let's see, Middle East and North Africa. Let's start with Sub-Saharan Africa. How do you make a decision when everything is a priority? Good point. Let's see. Nice fact here. Did you know climate change could drive 216 million people to migrate within their own countries by 2050? Wow. All right.
How would you prioritize this challenge?
So these are the type of decisions World Bank staff make every day.
Yeah.
All right. Let's start by investing in land and infrastructure development.
All right.
Click confirm, like that.
Congratulations, your choice helps people in Zambia.
Very cool,
Yeah.
very cool.
You don't have, if you go to general results, you will see the like percentages.
Lots of people are choosing education. Yeah. Cool. All right.
Awesome. Let's keep going.
Yeah, just one more.
Can I see my results? Where I get a score?
Yeah.
Cool. And can I see my results compared to other people?
Absolutely. If you hit general results, you will see that most of people go for education, but climate as well. And you see the breakdown in terms of different choice and different outcomes.
Nice. Very cool. So here at the DMZ Live with David, please come over, check it out. These cool experiences. I think we're going to have a quiz as well. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for that, Greg. It's good to see you working hard at the selfie wall.
Hard at work, and I'll be back there again today.
Great. And for folks that are joining online, remember you can join the conversation using the hashtag #ReshapingDevelopment. And that goes for you too, Greg.
All right.
Well, that is it from me, but the Zone is back on Saturday to wrap up the meetings. I'm Srimati Sridhar. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are in the world.